What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to talk about skip tracing for wholesale real estate or real estate investors, and we're just going to jump right into it. Now, skip tracing, for those of you who don't know, who are just getting into the data game, skip tracing is a crucial part of any real estate investor's tool belt. If you're doing cold calling, if you're doing SMS or Windows voicemail campaigns, you need to skip trace the data. And here's why. Typically, when you go out and purchase records from somewhere like ListSource or National Data Source, or wherever you're getting your data, whether you're still driving for dollars or you're getting your data some other way, you're typically just getting property information. And in order actually to find out who owns that property and their contact information, what you need to do is a process called skip tracing. Now, what that'll do is you typically will send your data to a skip trace vendor. They'll spit back out the data and they'll give you a couple of different phone numbers. Most reputable skip tracing services will give you more than just one phone number. You'll typically get a couple of different phone numbers, and some of the better sources will even give you confidence scores on which number is for that person. And now you got to remember that when you are skip tracing it, what you get back is solely dependent on the data that you are sending to the skip trace company. If you are sending things like absentee records, you got to realize that in some cases you may get the same contact information for multiple properties. Because if it's a landlord that has 12 properties, you're going to get 12 contact information that may seem like duplicates that are exactly the same, but you're going to get all that data back for each one of those properties, and it may be the same person. If you're skip tracing some other sources, you may have what's called a lower match rate. So that's another thing that you want to remember with skip tracing is, one, the type of list that you send over is important. Two, you want to keep an eye on what's called your match rate. So your match rate is if I send a skip tracing company 1,000 records, how many of those records are they finding matches for? Now, the great skip trace companies are actually only going to charge you for those matches. They're not going to charge you for each line of data that you send to them. And if you have a skip trace company that's charging you for every single record that you send, you should probably look for another source of skip tracing, because you're spending a ton of money on data that you're not even going to be able to use. So just think about it this way. I'm sending you 1,000 records and you're only giving me 500 back, but I'm still paying for the 1,000. Typically in the skip tracing software, it will only spit back out data. It only charges the vendor, whoever is doing the skip tracing, on the data that they get back. If it just returns an empty line, meaning there's nothing there, then it doesn't really charge them any money. So they're just inflating their profits on your dime. So you want to find a vendor. We recommend nationaldatasource.com for all of your skip tracing. They actually just came out with a brand new portal that makes it super easy for you to go and do your skip tracing. So I'll link that down below. So if you're still looking for a good skip tracing place or just getting into skip tracing, they'll be able to handle single skips and also batch skip tracing for you. Obviously, it gets cheaper as you do more records, but again, that's nationaldatasource.com. I'll link it down below so you guys can go check it out. And like I said, they just rolled out a new portal, so you never have to worry about a janky skip trace vendor or a VA somewhere in another country skipping it for you. We're trying to use one of these free sources, and we'll talk about why you want to typically stay away from these free skip tracing sources. But in their portal, you actually can upload your list. All you have to do is create an account. You'll upload your list. You'll match your columns. So if it's first name, you match it to first name. And typically within a couple of minutes, depending on the size of your list, you'll get your data back, and it'll even give you what the match rate is. And that'll show you, okay, if I sent over 1,000 records, how many did they find? And what we found is, using this vendor, we find anywhere from 80 to 99%, sometimes 100% match rate on these records, depending on what we're looking for, because they are a great skip trace vendor that uses multiple different places to skip trace their data. They don't just use one vendor. So you get a much better match rate, you get much better contact info, and you get much better results from your marketing campaigns, which is why we like using them. So we talked about two things. So we talked about what type of data your skip tracing matters. We talked about match rate. So the next thing that you want to know with skip tracing is what your hit rate is. So when you're actually using the data that you got back from a skip trace vendor, you should be keeping track of how well that data is performing for you, to see if those types of lists, or that skip trace vendor, or wherever you purchase the list, is where you should go back to. Unfortunately, a lot of investors don't do this, and this is actually costing you a lot of money if you're not. What you want to be doing is, when you send out text messages or you're making phone calls, keep a list. It's called a disposition report. You want to keep a list of the numbers that you're actually successfully able to dial for, the number of people that you're actually able to contact, the number of people that you generated a lead from, the number of people you had an appointment from, the number of people that you actually got a deal from. And that'll let you know if the data you're using is working or performing well for you. If you're starting to see those numbers decline, or those numbers just are zeros or very low numbers, then typically either the data that you got is bad, the skip tracing source that you used returned you bad, contact information, or it could be your method of marketing. So you want to keep a look at that hit rate. So how often is my text message getting delivered, or my call succeeding? Because that again will point back to the data. Now, you'll see that there's a lot of places that people recommend. We'll talk about free skip tracing. There's tons of YouTube videos here about people recommending free skip tracing sources. Now, if you're just getting started and you have a tight budget, it totally makes sense. But with skip tracing, there's so many skip trace vendors out there. And again, like I said, we recommend National Data Source because they allow you to do single skips now. Most companies only allows you to do batch skips, which means you had to have 100 or 1,000 records to skip trace. But now you can single skip property records. And again, you want to make sure you use a reputable company, because if you're spending your time driving for dollars, or you're finding these property records some other way and you use a free source, they're typically pulling different type of data. So there's consumer data and there's what's called premium data. And these skip trace vendors will utilize, the free ones will typically use consumer data. So this is if I filled out a form on Home Depot or something called co-reg, which is too nerdy to get into right now. But I filled out a survey somewhere online and someone saved that data on a server. And when I go to do my skip trace, that's what it's pulling off of. So it could be old postal records when I've changed addresses or something like that. That's typically what these free sources are pulling off of. Because they're not making money on you, they're making money on the ads and stuff that they serve there. And sometimes their subscriptions, that's how they're making money. Typically their data quality or their skip trace quality is pretty low. So you want to stay away from those if you actually want to scale this and do, have consistent lead flow. If you're okay with, janky data is what I call it, or data that's not accurate, and you're okay spending your time doing those methods because you just don't have any money to pay for a couple of records via skip, that's okay. But as soon as you can, just save up some money and invest in a good skip tracing service. Like I said, with National Data Source, you can now do single skips in their portal. Yes, it'll cost you more per record if you do a lower amount, but it's only a couple of dollars to skip trace 1 or 2 property records. So you can go into the portal and do that. So just to recap everything that we talked about, is skip tracing has changed. You want to make sure that you find a reputable skip tracing company. It seems like there's a new one that pops up every single day. So you want to make sure that your skip tracing sources you have, when you send them the data, that they're only charging you on the data that comes back. You want to make sure that you have good data that you're sending to the skip trace company, so you're not wasting your money. You want to make sure that you keep track of your hit rate when you are using the data that you came back. You want to make sure that your skip trace vendor is using premium sources and not just consumer data. So typically the paid ones will give you those premium sources for your skip tracing. And then you just want to know your numbers. So if you're going out to skip data, you just want to know how much can I spend on data and how much am I going to utilize this data. Now in other videos we'll talk about how to get the best run out of your data, whether you're doing SMS and cold calling, or SMS, ringless voicemail, and cold calling. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get the most out of your data. But for this video, we're just talking about skip tracing. So I'd like to know what you guys' experience are, who you're using with skip tracing now. Just comment down below with who you're using with skip tracing, what have been your results so far, and I'll see if I can help you out down below in the comments. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can check out new videos. And if you're existing, again, if you've been here a while, you've watched a couple of these videos, make sure you comment down below, ask any questions you have, and like the video. I appreciate it if you guys did that. And then if you want to learn more about our marketing methods, you can go to guide.thewholesaleconnection.com. You pick up our ebook that we put together that shows you how you can get your first deal in 7 days or less using some of the marketing strategies that we recommend, which skip tracing is a piece of those marketing strategies that you'll need. But I hope this video gave you guys some value, and I will see you in the next one.